Welcome to the B Block Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Scott. I appreciate you for joining me. And look, I'm pretty sure this is the only podcast where you're gonna get somebody to talk about the Astros, the Texans, and the Kendrick Lamar-Drake beef. There might be a few of them out there, but I am one of the few, if not the only, that's gonna give you a little bit of all of it. I'm gonna try not to do an episode quite as long as the last couple. I know the last couple have gone like close to an hour. We're gonna try not to do that. There will be plenty of my opinions to take in, so I don't have to like absorb this space like too much of this space with every single thought. I'll be on the radio for the rest of the week, Wednesday through Friday, with Clint Sterner on the drive. So make sure y'all are checking that out. I'll be on next week on In the Loop with John Lopez. I think for maybe the entire week, if I'm not mistaken, but something close to that. So make sure you watch out for that. But we got to get to this Astros news. And it was going to be more so about just Jose Abreu getting option to West Palm Beach. But there's more. There is more. The Astros pull off a walk-off victory, walk-off fashion style. Victor Carantini, the backup catcher, comes through in a pinch hit situation. Astros down to their final out. The game has gone every which way that you can imagine. And it looks like the Astros are down and out. They give up the 3 runs to start the game. Hunter Brown looks like a mess early on. Apparently, this is what he does. Can't really start innings, can't really start games out good, giving up all the cheese in the first inning. Apparently, that's just what he does. You get, you get your runs back. Joey Loperfido comes through. Well, you get Joey Loperfido coming through. You get Alex Bregman's first home run. You get a John Singleton home run. You actually get some offense, and then at the end of it, Josh Hader's out there again in a situation that he's now familiar with, a non-saving situation. Imagine this: that you sign a closer to a $95 million contract on a team that you think is going to be a World Series contender, and by the time you get to May, early May, you've only gotten this guy into like two or three saving situations. That was the case for Josh Hader, and that's what he was coming into a tie game. And look, for the first time, and it looks like several years, they allow this guy to pitch more than one inning. It turns out to be a decent decision, even though he gives up that run in the 10th. It turns out to be the right idea because he is your best guy, your best option at that point. Throws as many pitches or more pitches than he had the entire season, and keeps him in there just enough, gives up the 1 run, keeps him there just enough for Victor Carantini to come through off the bench and handle business. And I did think that it was interesting that on a day that the Astros optioned Jose Abreu to West Palm Beach, and they were very respectful about it. Jose Abreu seems to be a team player about the entire situation, agreeing to go to West Palm Beach as opposed to just saying, "Hey, I'll take my money and run. You can DFA me or whatever the case may be. I can just take my money and run." He does not have to do this. He does not have to stick around at this point. They are telling him that despite the fact that they're paying him close to $20 million a year to be their first baseman, that he is not useful to them, which is a fact. He is by metrics the worst first baseman in all of baseball, arguably the worst player in all of baseball who plays as much as he does or did. And so he could just take the money and run. He is sticking around. I give him some credit for that, and they've been very respectful of it. But I thought that it was interesting on the day that they made this decision that the guys that would come through specifically would be ones that are either there to replace him or guys that you could have made an argument for playing over him when he was struggling the way that he was. And what I mean by that is starting with Joey Loperfido, who comes in his first major league appearance, his first major league game, major league debut there, and in the fourth inning of a game, gets a 2 RBI single. And what a moment for a kid like that, right? And then and he's brought in, obviously he's playing in the outfield because Chaz McCormick's hurt, but he's brought in as an idea of a possible answer at first base for the issue at first base. Then John Singleton with the kind of a line drive homer, but really not because it hit the second deck and he hit it hard as hell. But it, he obviously is playing first base in place of Jose Abreu, which I think we can all agree is not an ideal situation. But even he is clearly a better option at that spot than Jose Abreu. And then Victor Carantini, who I know is the backup catcher, but I advocated earlier in the season when Jose Abreu started looking even worse than he had last year that they needed to do the uncomfortable thing of playing Victor Carantini every day, either at catcher or first base, and having some kind of flexibility between Victor Carantini and Yanir Diaz, effectively making their catchers double up as first baseman and figuring it out through there. I thought that was something that they should have considered. So all three of those guys come through with big hits on the same day that the Astros decide to send Jose Abreu to West Palm Beach, their spring training facility. And my big thing about this is, and we're talking about this on the radio on Sports Radio 16. Y'all can check it out. But my big thing about this is how Abreu is a symbol of where things sort of the line of demarcation and where things have started to go wrong for the Houston Astros. Everybody's going to point to, like, by the time this season is over with, the Astros are more than likely not going to make the postseason. And we will do our autopsy. We will do our reports and discussions on the demise of the Astros, at least for this one season. Start to question whether the window is closed, whether the dynasty, mini dynasty, however you want to consider this run for the Astros, whether it's over, and we'll talk about the line of demarcation and point to this season as when it turned. But it really turned the year before when Jose Abreu was signed, and that whole little time period there that now gets, I think, overlooked because for a couple of reasons actually. Because they had just come off a World Series after 2022, and letting James Click go or offering him an insulting 1-year deal after winning the World Series, after being the general manager of a World Series team, effectively letting him go, parting ways with him. That goes under the radar, A, because they had won the World Series, and it's like, hey, well, who needs you? We still got this World Series team. And then B, they did go to the ALCS the next year. Like, they were still, despite their struggles, and we all, if you're an Astros fan, if you follow the work that I do, the work that we do here in Houston, we talked ad nauseum about how frustrating times were last season in 2023. But it 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 really goes back to that period of post James Click firing him, and that little stretch there where Jim Crane is essentially operating as his own general manager with the advice of the folks that were at the center of some of the division between Jim Crane and James Click to begin with. So that's the big issue here. And we've made it's unfortunate because Jeff Bagwell is a hero of mine, of my childhood, honestly. And so it's wild to that we are in a space where we're speaking about him in a negative light. But the reality of it is this imbalance of brain trust, or this imbalance of where you get your advice, or how you lean, has impacted the Astros, I think, in a drastic way. And Jose Abreu is indicative of that, where you're you're making talking points about the back of somebody's baseball card and not giving enough credit to maybe the real time analysis, the real time data that is more useful to you than what can be put or printed on the back of somebody's baseball card. Like at first it came off as a figure of speech, but when you take everything into its totality, it's like this whole Jeff Bagwell, Joe Espada, and Dana Brown, all these guys saying that, talking about Jose Abreu's back of the baseball card. It makes you wonder, like, are they really looking at the back of people's baseball card? Because that was all you really had for with Jose Abreu. Everything else, the real time data showed the decline in power, the timing issues that they talk about, that they say he's going to go to West Palm Beach and work on. The real time data would have shown you this, would have told you this even before you signed the guy, and especially would have informed how much money you would have given the guy and how many years you would have given him up front. So it is representative of that time. Okay, Rafa Montero is somebody who I thought was pitching well until he wasn't there on Tuesday night against Cleveland. Is another part of that where they where they rushed to sign Rafael Montero for $11.5 million a year when it seems like there's a legitimate question on who they were bidding against. You know, so some of the I don't know if dysfunction is too dramatic of a term, but certainly this turn of how the Astros operate and the reasons why they parted ways with a World Series winning general manager, like those things are starting to show up. I feel like in the roster construction and the roster makeup of this team, the way we look at this team, and so I personally, from everything that I know about Jose Abreu, there is no real reason to bash Jose Abreu beyond the obvious of just clearly and matter of factly stating that he has not been good enough. He has been an abject disappointment, an abject failure as a Houston Astro. I think he's keenly aware of that, and so like this is just one of those where you got to look at it and say this was a bad one, and we got to rethink how we arrived at a space like this, or how we arrived to a decision like this, because I don't think that the the intelligent and like informed way that the Astros have gone about doing things over the years, I don't think that matches up with this sign and with the way this thing is going with Jose Abreu. Like, honestly, to me, it represents a turn and really an institution that all of us had faith in, and I think kept faith in because we had faith in. But you look at where they are, and this is not to be a wet blanket over a walk off and an exciting night, but overall, you look at how things are run, and it's concerning. Like it feels like something needs to change, or at the very least, somebody needs to do some introspection about how they view players, how they view information, right? How they value information versus the way that they feel about a baseball player or a baseball thing. And I do hope that the Astros find themselves in that place. All right, Nick Caserio, I want to hit on this. We've talked to Nick Caserio, or Nick Caserio has spoken with media, and most recently, I'm recording this not too long after he appeared on Payne and Pendergast, talked to them for, I don't know, close to 40 minutes or so, maybe more. And I mean, he talked about the draft, talked about Tank Dell, and a couple of other things. Those guys like to talk about wrestling and Sean Pendergast's days as a radio caller, a smack off champion, I should say. Let me put some respect on his status as a radio caller, as a smack off champion on the Jim Rome show. But my big thing that on Casario that I want to hit on is just noticing how he is not trying to take this early victory lap for the way things have gone. But I feel like he certainly could, like if he wanted to. He is very much trying not to where you could tell in hearing from him maybe a week or so ago. It was before the draft. You could tell that he was reluctant to heap praise on what they had done in free agency, the trades that they had pulled off, and how the team had elevated, even though a lot of us believe that they elevated. But then you saw in the draft how giddy he really gets. And I think what really makes Nick Caserio tick, what he's really about. And it's not to say that he's not about the other aspects of the job, but drafting players and moving those picks, I think specifically trying to trade, seeing who will trade, seeing if he can win a trade, like or in his mind win a trade at least, because he doesn't believe in grades and some of the frivolous analysis that a lot of us engage in. But you we heard him talk about Cade Stover. Now I've heard him talk about him twice, right? Between talking to us, the media at large, and then talking with Payne and Pendergast. And he was so willing to go down and I appreciated this, the transparency of how things went with the draft, how the run on specific positions, the feeling that that this particular player might not even be there when they pick, having to trade up to go get him once they realized he was still falling, but he might not fall anymore. Like this was Nick Caserio, I think the very most in his element. The draft. This is the thing that I'm learning, and is that he I think likes the draft maybe the most, even though it is the biggest mystery, the hardest thing to really predict success, that sort of thing. Um, I can tell he's really in his bag in that, but he's trying not to take the early victory lap, and I think that's a good mindset to have for him and for the team and all of that kind of cheesy stuff. I don't mind fans being excited. I know I'm certainly excited about covering all of it and seeing what kind of football team they're actually going to put out there. It would be shocking if they weren't at least as good as they were last year. So I am in a space of not thinking that they need to take a victory lap, but that they should be damn excited about the football team that they've put together. Because here's the reality: I talked in the last episode about the three players that I thought could step up and contribute immediately. And there very well could be more than that. It could be less than that, right? And it very well could be more than that. But I thought that there were three specifically that could step up immediately, and that was Kamari Lassiter, the cornerback out of Georgia, the safety out of USC, Kellen Bullock, and of course Cade Stover, the tight end out of Ohio State, the former teammate of CJ Stroud. I talked about them as being guys that can contribute right away. But the reality of that draft is overall, there's not one that we feel like either is a for sure starter or needs to be a starter. They drafted positions that are either of some need or concern between cornerback. They got a defensive tackle later in the draft, but obviously cornerback high. They got a safety in the third round. They, the tackle situation is its own conversation about what the need is there. I understand, but between cornerback, safety, of course, the defensive tackle thing, the tight end, those are all positions of need, but none of us feel like those guys that they pick necessarily need to go in and be a starter. And I think that in and of itself is a success and speaks to the quality of team that you've already built over the last two off seasons. So Nick Caserio's not trying to take that victory lap. I understand it. I can respect it. But the fact that we can come away from this draft and we can get into these smaller conversations about the cornerback speed. Like, is this accomplished cornerback who's been a part of two national championship teams and play all this football for a team full of NFL players on it? Can he play at the next level because he ran a bad 40 time? Like, yeah, that's an interesting conversation, but nobody feels like, man, they're living and dying on this second round pick. They need this guy to come in and be this and be that. No, and I did talk about this in the last episode, but they are all coming into low pressure situations. I think unlike the draft class before them, who I think were coming into high pressure situations and exceeded the expectations, which is obviously a credit to them and and honestly the environment around them. But these guys are different. in the sense that there are no this is a he was able to have fun with his draft class. Nick Caserio was able to have fun with this little draft without having to get a guy who must come in and be a dude for them, who like just must come in and be a dude. Obviously, if every single one of these draft picks misses, we're going to take Nick Caserio to task. That's the way it works. I don't think that that's going to be the case, but to me, it is again, it's just a credit to the job that they've done that been able to draft 9 players and nobody feels like any of them are like the team is desperate for them to hit the field. Okay, Euphoria, not the TV show, but Kendrick Lamar's Drake diss. I guess maybe it was about a month ago when the last time I addressed this rap beef, the rap back and forth, and it was around the time or just right after J. Cole very publicly and I thought unnecessarily bowed out of this rap beef. And I maintain that was not the way for J. Cole to play it. That I wish he had not played it that way. That I prefer that if he was going to bow out, just bow out. But just I prefer he disappeared and not said nothing than to go to his own festival, his own show, his own event, and bear his heart out like that. And basically put his face out there for everybody to take a shot at, to everybody just take a swing at. So I did not love that, even though I thought that for the most part, up until that point, nobody had actually out rapped J. Cole to me at that point, not in the rap beef. We have come a long way since then. We have come a long way since then. Rick Ross entered the chat. I mean, basically, everybody who's anybody has now weighed in on it and has now entered the chat. And we've had several back and forths now. And here we are, of course, Drake. We had the AI situation of, is this AI with Drake, and then it's not, but he comes back, or maybe it is, but then he comes back with definitely AI using, uh, Tupac and Snoop, and just all of this. Okay, now Drake drop, or I'm sorry, now Kendrick Lamar drops Euphoria on Drake's head, and it is. I'm gonna just say this. I see that there are people out there who are being the contrarian of, hey, this isn't good, or this was whack, or this was corny. I saw Gilly the Kid, who I think has a vested interest in saying that it's whack, but I saw him say that it was whack. I've seen a couple other people on the timeline say that it's whack. Yo, this is a knockout blow. A knockout blow. I would be shocked if Drake has anything for this. Shocked. Because it went beyond just bar for bar, who's got the better bars, and it reached that personal level. And I was talking about this back with the Kendrick J. Cole back and forth, that I didn't feel like it carried that personal punch that a rap beef needed for it to be compelling enough for us to be like losing our minds over it. And so I wasn't willing to lose my mind over it. I did not think it was that deep. This here is that deep, that deep. Y'all go out and check out Kendrick Lamar's. I'm pretty sure most of y'all have already heard it, but it is. And so the strange place that it has taken us, and this has been a part of the conversation. I think the big overarching theme is how, through this beef there has been an exposing of, if we didn't already know some of these things about Drake, but Drake has now been exposed between the way Rick Ross, in a very comedic fashion, went after him in his diss tracks and on social media, and then now with Kendrick Lamar on Euphoria, we've reached this place of like understanding that Drake, while he is technically black, just might be a culture vulture. He just might be a fraud in some ways. He just might not like all of this is much more of an act for Drake than it is for the rest of the acts, if that makes sense. Like everybody is being some kind of performative version of themselves, but in Drake's case, it is more performative than it is himself. I think is where we for the most part agree, except I guess for your hardest Drake stand. And listen, I'm not gonna pretend like I don't jam Drake's music, okay? Drake's got some hits. I'm not gonna tell you, I'm not gonna sit up here and say that Drake's music is whack. He's got some whack songs and some whack records. But by and large, Drake makes good music. I will concede. But what Drake represents, and this has always been a concern, and it's just been kind of put to the side because of how dynamic of an artist he is. But what Drake represents is not what the culture purports itself to represent, which essentially comes down to a lack of authenticity. A lack of authenticity. I think it's been pointed out in the past how Drake is actually an actor by trade. And, I didn't think that he was like some kind of award winning type of actor in Degrassi, but the act that he has put on as a rapper, and I do think it's part of the strangeness of this conversation is how we've tried to make Drake, who is black, have a conversation about him cosplaying blackness or that he is, you know, like pretending to be black. He obviously is black, but what he really is doing is acting, acting like a rap. He can rap, and so he has put on a rapper type of persona, but really is not a lot like what traditionally you'd feel like the best rappers represent. And that's can be a number of things, but it's not Drake. It is either, like in the case of the East Coast rappers, like the grittiness and the griminess of the East Coast, New York City, Philly, those areas, or a lot of the either gangster stuff on the West Coast that became popular at one point. Like there is an authenticity that came with all of it. And you get down to the South later on, where there's a griminess to that as well. Like it's not all thuggish. It's not all per se like, hey, I've got to be hard, but there is supposed to be some realness about it, some authenticity about it, and a backbone to it. You are at the end of the day, no matter what kind of music you make, expected to stand for something. And Drake has never really been that either. And so Kendrick, in a lot of ways, both of them very talented. I think on the same level in terms of talent, but Kendrick in terms of what he represents, and J. Cole to a certain extent as well, or really to a both of them versus Drake, they represent, I think, a level of authenticity that the game not only respects but requires. And you can't really take away anything from Drake because the success is there, the hits are there. We're not gonna just pretend like it didn't happen, like it hasn't happened, like it isn't continuing to happen, honestly. But this has exposed to me, exposed Drake to a kind of a wider audience of, hey, you know what? The real ones in this industry don't really like this guy, don't really rock with this guy. And there is something about his responses, his response to Rick Ross being, purported leaked text message on his Instagram stories between his mother calling Rick Ross racist. And then his response to this uh, was also curious on his Instagram. Like this in a lot of ways is even worse than the Pusha T thing. Like the Pusha T thing, I think was worse because of how personal it was. So like from a rap standpoint, it was worse, but from an image standpoint, like Drake ended up surviving that obviously, and he's gonna survive this as well. But I do think he's gonna be looked at a lot differently, a lot more like maybe the sucker that he always was trying to tell you that he was through his music. But it is strange, I gotta say, before I get out of here, it is strange to be having these conversations that we're having about biracial people. I've been having it myself with people in my like my personal life, like fully black folks who are growing skeptical of biracial black folks. And I'm familiar with with colorism and the color wars that we had, growing up, being darker versus the lighter skin tone and all of that. I didn't, and I always, of course, knew that biracial folks sometimes dealt with internal struggles and external struggles in terms of identity, like which one are you, how can you be both, being able to exist in their own skin. And I'm not trying to speak for them, but I've witnessed this, and I knew this existed. I did not ever sense the rivalry that has come up between like some of the thoroughbreds and versus the half breed. I don't know if I'm allowed to say. I guess this is my damn podcast. I can say whatever I want. We 30 minutes into it. Hope nobody gets offended. But the thoroughbreds and the half breed. This is becoming like an indictment on like how certain biracial folks move, and that has been strange because that's an uncomfortable place for me to be in because I don't really want to be like, I ain't really trying to go there with, I'm not. I've never been about like lessening someone's black experience, even if they are whatever percentage black they are. I feel like once you black in America, America doesn't like I we understand like one drop rule, all of that kind of stuff from back in the day. But once America decides you're black, they don't be like, well, he only a quarter black, so I mean, I'm only a quarter racist. Yeah, like it doesn't really. Once you black, it doesn't really matter in terms of what that means for you in society. I feel like now how you look, okay, whether you can pass, your socioeconomic status, your network, your built-in network, where you're born, all of that kind of stuff factors in. But once you're black, you're black. I've always thought that. So to be in a space where we're now doing the like like we're Kendrick Lamar, and this has been a thing. Okay, so Rick Ross called him white boy, BBL Drizzy, white boy. And then Kendrick Lamar leans into it. And this is the funniest thing to me. Was like, man, I don't even feel comfortable with you saying nigga, man. Be honest, man. Like, you so not authentic and so anti the culture that I don't even really feel comfortable with you out here saying nigga. We don't want you. We don't want to hear you say nigga no more. That is funny. Funny to me. Funny to me, but also strange and uncomfortable because I'm like, man, of course Drake can say nigga, man. He half black, half Jewish. Like he is a minority and black. Of course he can say nigga. But I also understand what they saying, what they mean. And then what's my man's name that does the I gotta pull him up. Is it Mark Phillips, the comedian on the I call him a Twitter comedian because that's where I see all of his stuff. But I think that's him. he has a skit ready like immediately for all of these joints. And he's got the skit with, it's a you got the other dude, like they're listening to the track, and it's like him with his boys, really with one of his boys, and then two dudes with sheets over them, white sheets over them with pens and notepads. So they're obviously the ghost writers waiting to, write a response. And it's, Drake and his boys sitting there as the skit goes, and he's got him talking in his white boy, kind of like white boy voice, so to speak. And like when they when they say you, well, what did he say, nigga no more? It's like I'm black, bruh. That skit, that skit is like it punctuates it all, man. It really does. I was looking it up. I don't know if I actually ended up finding it. I started talking. I think it was Mark Phillips. Is it Mark Phillips? I hope it is, man. Anyway, Drake exposed as a fraud, even if he is an all-time great, which he is. But yeah, man, the the people in that industry, he is not respected among his peers. He is not respected among his peers, and I don't get a sense that it is resentment toward his success. Like you see that a lot, where you reach the top, and then everybody below you is kind of resents you, or mad about your success. I don't get the feeling that that's what this is. This is people who have worked with Drake, and obviously, there's enough to know about him out there, and even through his work, where you're like, man, this dude makes hits. He makes music to make me, put my hands up and dance or whatever. But this dude ain't the real. This dude ain't the real. And Kendrick Lamar say, we don't want to hear you say nigga no more. Stop it. That is, and not to mention all of the personal shots about how he actually raises his child. It's like, you wouldn't know nothing about that. Hey, if that's whack to you, if the Kendrick Lamar Euphoria track is whack to you, you and I don't relate at all. I'm gonna tell you that. You and I don't relate at all. All right, that's it for this edition of the B Block Podcast. I said I wasn't going to run an hour, and I'm already close to 40 minutes. And if I keep talking, I can easily run into an hour. And also, I got the drive this week, so I'm going to get ready for that. And in the meantime, make sure you are subscribed to the B Block Podcast. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcast. You can rate it, you can review it, you can tell your people about it. And also check us out on YouTube. The video version of this podcast appears there. So you can interact with us there. We are really starting to kind of get that going. Didn't really early on in the podcast do a lot of video, but are starting to do it a little bit more now. So hope to be checking y'all out pretty soon, man. But until next time, y'all be good.